This is the round ahead, thanks to Coles, Nat Edwards, Josh Gabelich and Chad Wingard with you. Nice to have you both along for the ride. Welcome.
Hello, Nat. Geez, it's weird to see Chad Wingard in this situation because at this time of year we get used to new players in new clubs. I can't get my head around Luke Parker at North Melbourne. I still can't fathom Dan Rioli playing for anyone other than Richmond, but it's great to have you here, Chad.
It's unbelievable to be here. Can't wait to get stuck into it.
See, he'd rather be playing footy than sitting here with us. All right, we've got a jam-packed show for you coming up. So let's dive straight into the round ahead. Opening round, massive. 4 games down to 2. Here's how it's shaping up. The marquee game is now the Friday night game. Sydney up against Hock 2025. And then you've got the Giants and Collingwood on a Sunday. Obviously, those 2 games, that was the big news, Josh, obviously, last night coming through that they've had to be postponed, rescheduled. We're not sure exactly where it's going to fit in the fixture at the moment, but Cyclone Alfred causing a lot of havoc, and our thoughts are with those in Queensland.
Yes, they certainly are, Nat. It's a soft start to the year. We've only got 2 games, but plenty to look forward to this weekend. We'll get some clarity around when those games have been rescheduled. I believe the Thursday night game will be moved to round 3, so we'll see Brisbane and Geelong play in round 3. And the Gold Coast Essendon game, we'll have to wait and see. It feels like it could be quite late in the year. Yeah,
it's going to be a little bit tricky, but sending our love and positive vibes to all of those in Queensland. It is not the first time, though, that Mother Nature has had her say on a game of footy. And Chad, unfortunately for you in 2019 in Canberra, a game wasn't cancelled. You were forced to play in short sleeves, mind you, in snow. I mean, that is bizarre in itself, Clarko running around topless. But talk me through what it was like to play in the snow game.
Yes, I mean, forced is a tough word. I was actually paid to play. But yes, you can see me on the bench there. I was on minutes restrictions this game, so believe it or not, what's in my hand is a cup of tea. And mind you, little did I know that it was an English breakfast and they have a lot of caffeine in it. So I had 5 of the English breakfast. I didn't sleep that night.
Yeah, you've been pinging.
But one of the things, I suppose, is the talking point. I wasn't sure. I was really cold. I love wearing my long sleeves. Unwritten rule at Hawthorn. Changed now, but Sean Burgoyne, obviously an amazing person, someone you probably listen to, right?
Yeah, of course.
What would you do when he tells you to stay warm? I've got some hand warmers.
Oh, yeah.
Before the game. Oh, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yep, keep our hands warm. No. Chad, put them in your jocks and socks.
Sorry?
And I said, sorry, is this a test? Are you testing me? And I did what every, normal person would. I listened to Sean Burgoyne.
So they went in the jocks?
Yep, one in the front, one in the back, and one on either side.
And it worked?
Well, it kept me warm, but mind you, it was no long sleeve, so that was the other alternative.
Well, I'm glad you were protecting the assets there. So while the Lions will need to wait a little bit longer to unfurl their Premiership flag, I do still want to touch on Brisbane because it's been pretty tough to go back to back. Only 4 teams have done it in the last 30 years. And when it comes to the Premiership hangover, which we absolutely love to talk about in the media, check out this graphic here. The Lions are going to have to buck the trend of the last couple of premiers if they're going to do it. Lachie Neale looking a little bit worse for wear there as the baby, Josh.
Well, if you can't pick out who Ellen is, that's Chris Fagan. The glasses are a dead giveaway, but we're going to be discussing the Premiership hangover, aren't we, Nat? Because it's become a real thing, a big issue in the last couple of years. It's only happened 5 times this century, but it's happened 3 times in the past 4 years, where the reigning Premier hasn't played finals. Chad, it's happened twice in the past 2 years. Collingwood started 0-3 and never really got going. They missed out on finals. Geelong did it 12 months earlier. They were 0-3 and never got going. Have you got any concerns about Brisbane? We're talking about a condensed pre-season, an early start to the year. Are you concerned about them?
I'm not concerned about them. They've got some absolute talent. I think they're probably their most talented list. The thing that hurts them, obviously, is the shorter pre-season. But the other thing you don't take into account, that every single team are in their AFL, that's the blueprint to win, right? So they're scouting them every week. You're getting the best of the best. So that's something to be concerned about as well.
Well, Brisbane Premiership coach Chris Fagan was at Hawthorn during their 3-peat era. So he's learnt a lesson or 2 when it comes to the Premiership hangover and avoiding it.
Yeah, well, it comes back to a little bit about that staying humble after you win a grand final. I mean, you get that many pats on the back and people telling you how good you are. It's sort of easy to lose sight of reality, I think. You shouldn't have a sense of entitlement after you win a premiership. And we talked about that straight after the game. I said, boys, don't get like that. And we've had conversations about what that sort of behaviour looks like. So if it pops up, it's everyone's job to stamp it back down.
Attitude, Chad. Just stamp down that behaviour. We don't want to see it. Stay humble and hopefully it holds them in good stead.
Yeah, and early on too. So he's come out and said that. So it's hopefully the boys can start the season well, which they didn't last year.
I mean, as you mentioned, quality list, even without Joe Danaher, which is maybe the question mark, Josh, in terms of how that forward line looks. But they've certainly stacked for talent.
It's going to be impossible to replace Joe Danaher. We know that they didn't have enough time to replace him during last October's trade period, but they've got a lot of names that have been on the fringes, that have been unavailable, that are now edging towards being available. So the pressure for spots, I think, is really going to rise the standard. It's going to help make the hangover go away a little bit. I believe when you consider some of these names that are coming back in, Levi Ashcroft's a player that was taken at pick 5 last November who is ready to come in and play straight away. Then you look at the ACL crew, there's so many quality players. Lick McCarthy came back and played in the Amy Community Series. Darcy Gardner's not too far away. And Kitty Coleman, he's a little bit further behind those two, but we can't forget the last game he completed, he came runner-up in the Norm Smith medal. And then, Chad, there's Tom Duday. We haven't seen Tom Duday play at AFL level since round 12, 2023. He's almost the forgotten recruit from 2024. If he can come in and play a role in the back end of the year, I think he can have an impact. And Oscar McInerney, he doesn't have a premiership medallion. We can't forget that. So there's a handful of players there that are really going to be pushing to ensure they don't have a hangover.
Just give them the Premiership Cup now, I say. Now, there is nothing more I love on a footy field than a pocket rocket. That's right, the small forward. Chad, you're in good company. I want you two to take me through a list. So get up there. I want you to move around because, you're going to take us through this list of the best small forwards in the game. But I want some criteria, first of all.
Well, Nat, we're 8 minutes into the first episode of 30 and we're talking about small forwards. Come on, mate. Let's just warm into the year. Let's talk about some other players. It's quite ridiculous. But before we jump in to who we think are going to be the best small forwards in 2025, we need to define this because this role has evolved. What are we talking about when we reveal this list?
Yes, don't hate me. We're going to set the ground rules. Okay, so we're not talking high half forward. So you picture Isaac Rankins, we think about the Jason Horne-Francis, you think about Dylan Moore, Shai Bolton, the guys who are, up the field getting more touches, also that are attending centre bounces, we're cutting them out. We're talking about the ground level players that spend majority of their time inside forward 50.
Wow. Let's have a look at this list because it's stacked full of absolute class. You look at the first 3 names, Tyson Stengel, Charlie Cameron, Tom Papley. They've all been All-Australians in the past. Tyson Stengel, what he's done at Geelong to revive his career has been remarkable. 46 goals last year. Charlie Cameron's now a Premiership player and a 2-time All-Australian, and we will get to Tom Papley. But is there anyone that's going to go past these quality players this year?
It's a tough call. I mean, we always talk about Bobby Hill. We've had a conversation earlier. I think he's an absolute star. He kicked 4 goals in the Indigenous All-Stars. He's ready to go. He's got a Norm Smith. I mean, the All-Australian nod's almost the one thing that he hasn't got. And I think with, Collingwood revamping their list, he's going to have a lot more supply. The likes of Dan Houston kicking in the ball as well. So I think he's the one to keep an eye on.
He's the one for me. I think he's about to explode this year. I think he's going to be firmly in the All-Australian discussion. There isn't a Toby Green on this list. Just to define why he's not on this list.
Yes, again, I think that he comes into the high half forwards. He gets too much of the ball. Same with Isaac Rankin. They're 18 plus touches. They 10 centre bounces and they don't, I suppose, do their damage inside the forward 50.
He's a marking tall, small. Now let's get to Friday night because remarkably the season isn't starting at the Gabba, it's starting at the SCG and it's going to be centred around these 2 excitement machines. I can't wait to see them for the first time in 2025.
Yeah, these guys are absolute excitement machines. I mean, they get their team up and about. You think about what they bring. You think about the goals, shots on goal, the excitement, celebrations. But I just want to touch on Watson. Obviously, you see there he had 3.4 shots on goal. It was very highly, I suppose, everyone's speaking about how many times he missed easy shots last year. And a lot of people are thinking, it must be Luke Bruce, it must be Gunston. No, it was Sam Mitchell who Sam Mitchell put his hand up and said, you know what, I'm going to make sure there's not too many chefs in the kitchen. I'm going to make sure that we spend 10 to 20 kicks after every training session, make sure we down-packed what the skill set and actually what the mindset takes to make sure you're executing at the big stage.
We know Tom Papley's a star, but it's a second year. This kid is still 19. Can he be in the All-Australian discussion in just his second year?
Well, he's shown glimpses. I mean, the last 4 games, he averaged 3.5 goals a game. He had 5 shots on goal, 8 score involvements, 12.5 disposals. I mean, you put that over a longer period of time, but that's what it takes. Tom Papley's done it for a whole season and it's been his second year. Hopefully he doesn't get the yips, but I think he's an absolute star. 7
goals in 2 finals. I don't need to remind you, Nat.
Way to put a lot of pressure on a 19-year-old, Josh.
I don't think he will be an All-Australian in his second year.
I reckon he's the kind of player, though, that really thrives in the pressure moments and he kind of likes that backs to the wall, us against them mentality and the external noise. I don't think it'll bother him. He'll thrive in that.
Yeah, I think the piece there is that, he's got all the attributes and the keys to actually to do it. It's just going to be the time and the consistency.
Wizard Watson, I absolutely love it. It is a big night for the Sydney Swans, though. SCG, we've spoken about them at length over the summer, of course, after yet another grand final fail. And Dean Cox will officially coach his first game for Premiership points, marking a new era at Sydney. Of course, he's taking over from the Swans' longest ever serving coach in John Longmire, who took over from Paul Roos, who was at the time the longest serving coach, who took over from Rodney Eade, who was also the longest serving coach. So there's a fair bit of pressure, I would say, Josh, going on to Dean Cox. I know that there's usually a honeymoon period for most coaches, but in Sydney, with that market, you've got to be successful, don't you? You've got to maintain it.
You certainly do, and they've been successful for a long period of time. Not often you get your first senior coaching role at a place that you've spent the last 7 years. So he served such a great apprenticeship. He's done the work. He's done the time. He gets a great opportunity to come in and take over a team that were unstoppable for most of last year.
Yep.
They reached the grand final, second grand final in the past 3 years. So it's a great opportunity for Dean Cox, but he's got a brutal start to the year when you consider who they've got and who they're missing. Errol Goulden is going to be such a huge loss, plus Callum Mills. How can they handle that early?
I agree. I think I've been part of at Port Adelaide, we had Ken Hinkley, right? Clean cut, started the season with Ken Hinkley, Matty Primus, and we had Buddha Hawking take over. I suppose the one we can probably relate to most is the Sam Mitchell and Clarko handover. The thing that made it very difficult was actually because I suppose Clarko had his set ways in which he wanted to I suppose, coach the team and the way they wanted to play, right?
Yep.
While that was happening, he was head coach at Hawthorn, and Sam Mitchell was their head coach of the VFL in the Box Hill. Yeah. So when a player would come from Box Hill to Hawthorn, it actually made it very difficult for that player to kind of emulate exactly what was happening. Completely different game systems. And that's why I'm wondering whether they have an issue with Dean Cox's system. Is it going to be a man-to-man defence? Is it going to be a zone? What does it actually look like in terms of the, I suppose, the nuances, the stuff that you can't exactly get across in a few months?
But what we do know is the Swans are a very, very successful football team if we look back at history. And this is the stat of the week here. If you take a look, but Longmire, Roos and Eade took the Swans to 24 finals series in 29 seasons. So that's a little bit intimidating if you're Dean Cox, Josh.
It certainly is. No, that's going to be a hard act to follow. And all the noise coming out of the Sydney Swans, it's been a pretty brutal pre-season. I mean, we've heard a lot about the back-to-back 2Ks on day one of the pre-season. We've also heard quite a bit about the 7 hours it took to forensically dissect the grand final and what went wrong. Very different to how they handled the 2022 grand final disaster. So we're all intrigued to see how Friday night unfolds.
So while the AFL works through exactly when the Gold Coast Essendon game will be rescheduled to, let's touch quickly on the Suns, because I feel like we say this every year. They're entering their 14th season in the competition and we say, is this the year they finally make finals? And every year I say yes and then they burn me. So I'm going to ask you two, is this the year? Chad?
Okay, if we look against their first 12 rounds, I think they're going to win 8 of their 12.
So they've got a soft draw?
I think they've got a soft draw start off. I think they've got 2 games back-to-back in NT. They've got a lot of home games.
First 6 games are against sides that didn't play finals last year. They could be 5-1, they could be 6-0. Imagine if they got off to that start.
If they get off to that start, they only have to win, I reckon, about 5 to 5.5 games, right, after their bye. And I think that's capable, but they have to win games away. Are they capable of doing that consistently? I think that's the question that everyone wants to know, but I think they have the ability, and I think adding Daniel Rioli, that another score source from their back half, so they're not just relying purely on stoppages. I think that's going to be massive.
The away game issue was huge last year. They lost 17 in a row. They won their last 2 quite late in the year. They've got West Coast early in Perth. They need to get off to a great start by winning on the road. And
it's a new look Suns too in 2025. Late last year they went through a little bit of a rebrand. They've got a new logo, a new Guernsey. I can't even see the logo here. What do you guys think of this jumper?
Well, we saw Noah Anderson up close during Captain's Day. We couldn't see it.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this one, but what I am a huge fan of is the pink Guernsey. Look at this. I would wear that. Would you wear that, Chad?
If I played for them, I had no choice.
Okay, so you wouldn't choose to wear it.
It's definitely better. You know what team you're playing on when you're wearing this one.
They're only going to wear it once so far this year. I think we'll see it a bit more. They're going to wear it and gather around, but I reckon beyond that we should see it almost every second.
I am reliably told that pastel pink is one of the trend colours for 2025. So the Gold Coast Suns
at the moment.
Are on the mark at the moment. Now Joshua is a man who loves culture. He loves a midweek art house film. He also loves a trip to the gallery. So we thought we'd ask him to paint us a picture each week. And help us get to know some of the individuals in our game a little bit better. Josh, who's our subject today?
Well, Nat, this is a story that will resonate
Hang
with...
on a second. Was that your face over
I
the
didn't choose
Mona
that,
Lisa?
Steve, just to be clear. I did not choose that. I don't...
Chad, do you think he asked for
He's
that in the
cap.
production?
That's cap. He's lying.
Yeah, okay, continue, sorry.
Now, this is a story that will resonate with a lot of young parents across the country that travel quite frequently for work. A lot of AFL players sacrifice a lot each week to play the game, but there is not another player in the game this year that's making the family sacrifice that Callum Ward is in 2025. Now, his wife Ruby and their 3 young children, all under the age of 5, have recently moved back to Melbourne for family reasons, while Cal Ward spends 2025 living on his own for the first time in his life in Bondi and chasing that elusive premiership. Now, when he made this decision last year, he'd actually spent much of 2024 believing it was going to be the last year of his career, but circumstances changed before their 3rd son was born in November. He found a new lease on life on a wing, playing under Adam Kingsley, and then he went through more September heartbreak again. He's now lost 5 prelims, 3 semi-finals. He's never been to a grand final. He missed 2019, of course, with that ACL tear. So when they sat down in September to extend him into an 18th season, Adam Kingsley and Jason McCartney were across this unique arrangement. What it meant was he didn't start pre-season training until January. And then throughout this year, they've got 12 interstate games. Every game they don't play in Sydney, he will spend extra time in Melbourne, whether that means flying back to Sydney via Melbourne. That's how they'll accommodate him. So it's a massive sacrifice for Callum Ward, but this is a guy who has done more than anyone else at that football club to build the game in Western Sydney. He is all in on an elusive premiership, and wouldn't it be a fairy tale finish to a phenomenal career?
It would indeed, and the unsung hero of all of this is Ruby, his wife. Managing 3 little children by herself is absolutely insane. I couldn't do it, so hats off to you, Ruby. And of course, if you want to read more about this story, and it's a brilliant story, head to afl.com.au and the AFL Live app. Very nice, Josh, or should I say Mona Lisa. Now, on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app this year, we and our panel of experts are going to be putting together a rolling 25. So the inaugural list is going to drop on Tuesday, March 11th. So that's next Tuesday. Make sure you look out for that. So we thought we'd give Chad a little bit of homework, given it's his first show, and you had to come up with your top 5 best players as it sits right now. Who you got?
As it sits right now, you see my list come up. Nick Dacos, number 1. I see it across the board. He's an absolute star, and I think, like, for his age group. But I think some of the people, when I showed this list, they're like Jeremy Cameron, Zach Butters, number 2 and 3. Jeremy Cameron is a matchup nightmare. I mean, for someone to be able to get 20 into most weeks and be able to dominate a game from aerially on the ground, he's an absolute star. Zach Butters for me, top 4.
This is the one.
Yeah.
It's controversial.
Controversial.
I like it though.
He's been top 4 in the Brownlow last 2 years, right? Back-to-back best in Ferris. He's All-Australian 2 times. What I love about him is his ability to be inside and outside. Like, he's such a hard nut, but then he obviously has the polish to, I suppose, and he's not the biggest frame. Like, he's probably 183, but his grunt and effort, I mean, we speak about his fines and his effort, but I just think he's an absolute star. And I think being 24 years old, I think he's, right now, he's probably one of the players I'd love to have on any team.
And then Cripper and the Bont to round out your top 5. Speaking of Nick Dacos, though, I mean, Josh, this is a really scary prospect because in the pre-season so far, he has been lighting it up on the track, on the field, and here even Mason Cox saying he's going to go to another level. He's in the leadership group. He's still just 22. It's the Brownlow is coming this year, isn't it? Surely.
I don't want to get carried away because he should have won 2 by now. 2 in his first 3 seasons. It's remarkable that he's not a Brownlow medalist yet, but he's going to take some beating this year because apart from that plantar fasciitis issue he had after Christmas, he's had a really, really good pre-season. He couldn't have looked slicker against Richmond last Tuesday night. I'm excited.
What about the Pies? Are you excited about them? They're playing against the Giants. That game on Sunday at NG Stadium. But are we going to be saying about Collingwood that they're too old at the end of the year or that they have a wealth of experience?
Well, it's going to be a question and a narrative that we focus on across the year because they made some pretty bold list management decisions last year to re-sign Steele Sidebottom, to re-sign Will Hoskin Elliott. It means they're going to start 2025 with 10 players north of 30. It's incredible to think they're the oldest list, they're the most experienced list. We go back to 2022, but it worked for Geelong. They were the oldest premiership team ever, 28 and a half years. But
And then they fell off a cliff.
They did, they did. But late in the season, we'll see Dan McStane and Darcy Cameron also become 30. So we could see a new record broken if they go all the way this year.
They're all in, Chad, just quickly. You think it's going to work for them?
I think it's going to work. I think you talk about their age profile, but their best players are young. So that's where I'm like, I'm not too worried. I mean, Nick Dacos, DeGoey, Houston, they're all in their prime. So I'm not too worried about their age.
I'm with you on that because they've got Isaac Quainer, Braden Maynard, a lot of players in that 25 to 29 bracket. Darcy Moore's one of them as well. So they're still stacked in the belly.
And that is it for the round ahead. Tickets are still available for the 2 games in Sydney ahead of opening round. Head to afl.com.au and the AFL Live app for more information. But we will see you again next Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the footy.